tased, all while being called a traitor to my country.
I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance.
You hear that, guys? It's for Joe Biden. Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, boo.
The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
You know, I have two young children. I have a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And they're the light of my life. And the reason I was able to hug them again was because of the courage that you and your fellow officers showed that day.
Good evening and welcome to BNC Live. I'm Brittany Jones in for Laverne McGee. A riveting day in our nation's capital with powerful statements and testimony during the first day of the insurrection hearings. Let's get straight to our White House correspondent, Ariana Manise, for a look at today's events. Good evening, Ariana.
Members of Congress have the power to change that. Brittany.
All right, BNC White House correspondent Ariana Manise live for us on Capitol Hill. Ariana, thank you. And the next hearing hasn't been scheduled, but Congress is set to go on a summer recess. Chairman Representative Benny Thompson has already informed the committee to be prepared to be called back. Okay, so we have Congressman Aguilera here with us, who was at the Insurrection Committee meeting today. So, Congressman, if you can hear me, I want to ask you about your reaction to today's committee meeting.
You know what, today was just incredibly real and raw testimony from these 4 police officers, 2 Capitol police officers and 2 DC Metro police officers who shared their experiences and relayed firsthand that this was real. This was a real scenario. This was a real insurrection with violence that was sent their way. These individuals had 2x4s and flagpoles thrown at them, speakers thrown at them. They suffered injuries and continue to deal with traumatic issues as a result of protecting democracy, which is all they signed up to do here on January 6th. And so they put it on us as lawmakers that it's our responsibility now to protect democracy because they did the very same thing on January 6th.
And Congressman, it was oftentimes very, very emotional for you all. We saw everyone with tears in their eyes hearing these things. But the big question that people across America are asking tonight is, what will this solve?
Well, it's important for us, you know, just like the 9/11 report conveyed, you know, a full documentation of what happened, failures, what we need to do to protect our country and this Capitol. That's the gold standard. The gold standard is to produce a document that will be clear and convincing and tell the American public exactly what happened on January 6th, what led up to the events on January 6th, including who financed those individuals, as well as what we can do to protect the Capitol, our temple of democracy here in Washington, D.C.
And in your opinion, what do we do to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, there's a host of things, and the committee will do our work, and we'll put together a clear and convincing list, everything from the operational structure to how security decisions are made here in the Capitol, to potentially look at hardening our facilities, our doors and our windows to make sure that individuals can't break in to the Capitol building. So there's a range of things that we can do physically as well as organizationally within the Capitol. And so our job is going to be to look at all of that, but we can't whitewash what happened, and we can't whitewash everything that happened from Election Day to January 6th. Who encouraged that behavior, what fed into it, who paid for it. Those are the things that are going to be important components of the committee's work. I look forward to digging in with my colleagues. This is not bipartisan, this is nonpartisan, and so we're going to carry on the activities and make sure that we seek the truth. That's our only focus at this point.
And Congressman, that is our goal here at the Black News Channel. We have obviously Black viewers who would like to know, when you heard what the officer testified, it was Officer Dunn, when he said that he was called the N-word and he had never been called that in uniform. What was your reaction to hearing that?
Well, and what Officer Dunn also conveyed is that other officers of color, heard that, and slurs were sent at them too. Some who had never heard that word at all as well. He indicated he'd never heard it in uniform. It just hurts my heart, honestly. And Sergeant Ganell, who is from the Dominican as well. So our two officers of color who testified both had racial slurs thrown their way, and it pains me. And Officer Dunn testified, and his comment before in the press was, is this America? And that's a difficult question to answer. And you saw him, answer it too, because we can do so much better as Americans. But there were many individuals who came that day with bad intentions, and they're the ones who are responsible for this, in addition to those who financed them and told them to come. But my heart aches for Officer Dunn and what he went through, but I really do appreciate his thoughtfulness and his willingness to come testify and share his story. It's so compelling, and I hope every American has an opportunity to see it.
Yeah, and we know every American wants accountability after this tragic incident. Representative, we want to thank you so much for your time, for spending your afternoon with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Brittany.
Also inside the Capitol during the insurrection were the congressional aides. The aides have been very vocal on increasing security measures at the Capitol building. And one of the aides is here with me tonight to talk about this, Communications Director for Representative Yvette Clarke's office, Remington Belford. Remington, good evening and welcome to BNC.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so, obviously it's been a difficult time for you all this month, or just since this happened. So walk us back through to that day inside the Capitol. You were there on January 6th. What was that day like for you?
I'll say that that day began like any other, but it ended in one of the most traumatic experiences many of us staffers have had the displeasure of living through. You saw a sea of sycophantic supremacists laying siege to the seat of our democracy. And it was heart-wrenching to see how close they came and how dangerous this assault was. I mean, there were 7 people who lost their lives, and I think they said up to like 140 Capitol and DC police officers that were harmed protecting us. And so it was an alarming day, it was a concerning day, and a day I hope we never have to live through again.
And I remember I was on the desk when that news broke, and obviously the results counting was happening, and I heard the knocks on the door before they were able to basically breach the building. But talk about that. What has it been like for you since that day? Has it been any PTSD, any emotional trauma that you have experienced since that day?
Well, definitely. And I won't speak for everyone. I can speak specifically for me, but I know the general consensus that everybody was traumatized. Even the people who are acting as if they weren't were traumatized. And we've relived that moment in various capacities. And I know I'm grateful for therapy because my therapist has allowed me the opportunity to, work through these things and reconcile these things. But I know listening to the testimony of the Gallant officers today, I was triggered. And I know a lot of my colleagues were triggered in listening to that because it made it real again, and you re-experienced it and it re-traumatized us like we were living it all over again. And so I'll say, just to circle back, we're experiencing it in different ways, but I believe everybody was traumatized, and it has changed the nature of Capitol Hill dramatically.
And your reaction to what you heard during those hearings today?
I am grateful to not only the elected officials who have taken this mantle in a bipartisan manner to ensure that the truth is made clear to the American people, and that traumatic day that we lived through is not whitewashed or watered down or changed for people's comfort. I also want to salute and thank the gallant police officers that shared their testimonies and bared their souls today to ensure that people know that this really happened in the way in which it really happened, that it's based in the truth, and that this was no, just lackadaisical day of tourism. It was a concerted, direct attack on our democracy, and it was alarming how close they came to being successful.
Mm-hmm. And Remington, knowing what you went through that day and how no one wants to ever see this happen again, right? What do you think should be done moving forward?
I definitely believe that one, these committees are one of the best steps we could take to make sure that the American people have all of the information, all of the facts. And I think that I support the methods and the tenure that has led to this. Excuse me. I support the efforts that the Democratic Party, as well as some of the Republican parties, have done to make sure that the American people are made aware. I think that once the American people truly are able to see what happened, experience it, hear it, and see some of the vitriol that was spewed, I think that it'll truly change the narrative, and that narrative that's led to this type of sycophantic behavior being tolerated. I won't opine on the idea of what the elected officials have planned, but I know that this is a concerted step in the right direction.
Well, it was definitely heartbreaking to see and hear all over again, and our prayers continue to go out to you and everyone else who's dealing with just getting over that trauma from that day. Remington, we appreciate you for sharing your story tonight. We appreciate your time. And there is so much more to talk about tonight, especially when it comes to COVID-19. When we come back, the latest numbers in what people have started calling the pandemic of the unvaccinated and how it's affecting those who are also fully vaccinated. We're back with that. Welcome back to BNC Live. New mask guidance from the CDC reverses its previous guidelines, now announcing those who are vaccinated should still wear a mask indoors. This decision comes as the COVID-19 Delta variant continues to spread throughout the country. There are reports tonight that President Biden will announce vaccine mandates for federal employees. He's hinted at this afternoon before commenting on the CDC's new recommendation.
Are you concerned that the CDC's new mask guidance could sow confusion?
We have a pandemic because of the unvaccinated, and there's so much enormous confusion. And the more we learn about this virus and the Delta variation, the more we have to be worried and concerned. And then only one thing we know for sure, if those other 100 million people got vaccinated, we'd be in a very different world. So get vaccinated. If you haven't, you're not nearly as smart as I said you were. Thank you.
And as the Delta variant sends cases surging across the nation, health experts fear a combination of misinformation and hesitancy to get the vaccine will only contribute to the rising numbers. Kelly Wright, BNC host of The World Tonight, spoke to Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's leading voice on infectious disease and chief medical advisor to the president, on what he wants Black and brown communities to know about COVID-19. Kelly?
Brittany, good evening to you. The President of the United States.
Definitely got to see a change. We know from experience, Kelly, that we've been impacted by it. Kelly Wright, co-host of The World Tonight, live for us. Kelly, thank you. Now I want to bring in Dr. Peter Hotez. He's the Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College and co-director of the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development in Houston. Dr. Hotez, we're happy to have you with us. Good evening and welcome to BNC.
Thanks so much for having me.
And Dr. Hotez, nearly 50% of the U.S. population has been fully vaccinated, but yet we are still seeing a surge of infections and hospitalizations. Explain why we're seeing such an increase right now.
Yeah, because that 50% number, unfortunately, doesn't reflect the heterogeneity across the country, the variability. So the truth is it's much higher up in some parts of the Northeast, up in New England, some of the mid-Atlantic states, up to 70% or higher. But then you get down here where I am in the South, particularly some of the southern states like Louisiana, Mississippi, we're doing terribly, and especially terribly among young people. So, for instance, in Louisiana, we've got a 16% of the adolescents vaccinated. Essentially, none of the kids are being vaccinated, none of the adolescents. Young adults, 30%. And now they're going back to school. So, for instance, in some parishes in Louisiana, they're going to start going back to school August 9th. Mm-hmm. Delta's accelerating. Nobody's vaccinated. The governors are not ordering mask mandates. All this is going to create this confluence, this perfect storm of bad things to accelerate a lot of transmission. And, you know, as you know better than anyone, the BIPOC communities are very, very big down here and a high percentage of the population. So I worry about a lot of Black and brown kids and young adults. They're the ones who are going to suffer the most. And that's why I'm here tonight talking with you and talking to as many BIPOC radio outlets, news outlets that I can to send that message.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing that tonight. I mean, you're talking about, we're seeing an updated guidelines from the CDC, mask on mask wearing right now. How do you get the message out across to people that they need to do something to make sure that they're protecting themselves, because we have all these variants right now?
Well, I think one of the problems has been the messaging has mostly been about older Americans, that they're the ones who are going to lose their lives from COVID-19. But it doesn't tell the full story. Yes, the death rates are higher among older people who get COVID-19, but number one, we're still seeing a lot of deaths in young people. Second, a lot of hospitalizations in young people. So that's who's piling into hospitals right now, are young men and women, young adults, adolescents, and that's what the big rise in hospitalizations all about. So you have to, push back that message. Hey, if you're young and healthy and take care of yourself and go to the gym, you don't need to worry about this. It's not true. We're seeing a lot. That's not a substitute from virus neutralizing antibodies from the vaccine, and it's really important. It's not too late. If you still haven't been vaccinated, now's your time, especially when kids start going back to school in just a few weeks. There's still time to get vaccinated before the school year starts. So I'm worried about a lot of the teachers not getting vaccinated, young parents, adolescents. These are the people who are going to be affected, not only because of deaths, but hospitalizations and long-term disabilities, because we have this phenomenon known as long COVID that lasts more than 6 months, but we don't know if it's going to continue for 6 years or 60 years. And even we're seeing neurologic injury. So this is not a time in your life when you're, maybe applying for colleges, maybe you're getting your first job, maybe you're starting a family, hoping to get your first apartment or new house. This is not a time in your life when you have to worry about neurologic injury or pulmonary injury or cardiovascular injury. And that's why it's so important to get vaccinated.
Yeah, and I'm one of those long haulers that you just mentioned with Dr. Hotez. We know that this virus has no name, so thank you so much for spreading the word on why people need to consider getting vaccinated. We appreciate your time. And coming up next, we have much more news after this short break. We'll see you in 3 minutes. Welcome back to BNC Live. We now turn to Florida Representative and Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy, who served on the January 6th Select Committee today. Representative, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Great to be with you, Brittany.
We are happy to have you here to talk about everything that happened today. So, first off, I want to ask you, you said officers at the Capitol on January 6th saved your life. Your actions had a profound impact on me, is what you told those officers today. Tell me about that statement and how today's hearing impacted you.
Well, today's hearing was heart-wrenching and at times just very intense. It was a bit as if both the officers as well as the members of the Select Committee were reliving January 6th in a very visceral way through the videos and through the testimony of the officers. For my part, on January 6th was about 40 paces from that hallway of hell where 3 of the 4 officers held the line and suffered great bodily injury in their efforts to hold that line. And Officer Hodges was being crushed in that doorway, holding that line, which allowed me the space to be evacuated by other Capitol Police. Congresswoman Kathleen Rice and I were evacuated out of the office there on that hallway. But we heard a lot of what happened on that hallway while we were trapped in that office, and in many ways relived that day alongside these officers as they told their harrowing but courageous stories.
And you talked a lot about getting back to your kids and them being able to help you do that safely. What was it like seeing the video and hearing this all over again for you?
Well, while it was emotionally difficult for me, I saw the same difficulties experienced by those officers. Officer Fanone has 4 daughters that he talks about. Sergeant Gunnell talked about how when he came home soaked in chemical spray. He couldn't allow his wife, who'd been waiting for him to get home safely, to hug him. You know, I think at the end of the day, what you saw were testimonies about real people who experienced a very real thing and are shocked now to see others try to say that what they experienced didn't actually happen.
Yeah, and we know obviously accountability is what Americans want across the board. What are you hoping that this committee will be able to accomplish?
I'm hoping that this committee will follow the facts to wherever they lead so that we have a full accounting of the events that led up to January 6th, what happened on January 6th, and so that we can make good recommendations on how we can make the necessary changes to better secure our democracy and to secure this Capitol and to provide these courageous law enforcement officers with the resources that they need to carry out their duties.
Congresswoman Murphy, thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate the work that you all are doing out there at the Capitol. Thank you. And stay with us. Much more news after a short break. Back, the Dixie Fire continues to scorch parts of Northern California. It has burned more than 200,000 acres. It is now the largest wildfire burning in the state. The fire is just 23% contained, and some rain today is helping firefighters. BNC's Ansar Hassan joins us live from the small town of Quincy with the details. Good evening, Ansar.
Good evening, Brittany. It didn't rain a lot, and it didn't rain for a long period of time, but the cooler temperatures really helped to control the fire's pace, especially along the eastern ridge, and that's where we're at. This is the small town of Quincy. An evacuation warning has been issued, but residents know if the fire picks up pace, they will be asked to leave. That's what happened with other nearby communities, some which weren't as lucky.
The ground is still hot from the burnt homes, smoldering in the aftermath of the Dixie Fire.
On these winds, as we know, if the winds pick up and push embers across the line of control, the situation could change very quickly. Reporting live in Quincy, Ansar Hassan, BNC.
Ansar, thank you. Well, as the fires continue to burn, air quality concerns grow. And joining us now to discuss this further is BNC meteorologist Brittany Likely, who is here with me now to talk more about this. Obviously, Brittany, he's been covering this thing left and right. Is this typical for the season? We know we have these fires every year, but now it seems like it's getting much worse.
So, Brittany, it is heightened, and we've been dealing with just relentless heat, these relentless heat waves, and we can see that across the country right now. In the middle of the state, we're dealing with hot and hazy humid conditions, and also when you take it back to the northwest, we are dealing with more excessive heat warnings. Now you combine that with the drought that we've been dealing with, and this is a mega drought, something that you don't see within 1,000 years. So when you can combine the hot temperatures and the drought, you get these fires. Now human-caused fires like the one that we saw from the one Dixie Fire that Ansar is covering with electrical equipment, but you can also get it by the weather as well with the cloud-to-ground lightning just sparking these fires. So we have over, 79 fires burning right now, burning over 1.5 million acres, Britt.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I mean, you talk about the smoke from these going from the East Coast to the West Coast, the West Coast to the East Coast. Why is that happening?
So this is what's happening, Brittany. You have these fires and the smoke, and the particles are lifting up into the air. They're getting into the upper level jet stream, or what I like to call upper level winds, and they're just moving across the country. You can see, look at that time forecast on your screen right now. Between Monday, you see Sunday, Monday, headed into Tuesday, just it moving across the country. Now, the good thing about this, at least on the West Coast, the smoke is thick. Now, when it travels in the upper atmosphere and comes down towards the East Coast, at least it's a little bit thinner, Britt.
Now, obviously, this is hard to breathe this in, and ultimately has an impact on the air quality. How does, these conditions that they have right now impact the air quality?
So let's talk about the air quality index. And if you're on the eastern half of the country, like Boston, Massachusetts, it's good to check this even when you just go outside for today. It lets you know kind of what is going on in the atmosphere. So you can see these hazy skies is caused by these particles. That's where you can see, what is actually happening. So, right now, most of the East Coast, Boston, fortunately, not under this air quality warning. But if you go a little bit further down to the tri-state area, they have a warning not letting up until later on this evening or this morning.
Yeah, I mean, but Britt, how does this actually impact from you taking in this smoke? How does that smoke impact you, whether it's lungs, internally? How does that happen?
So you definitely could have some respiratory issues, especially dealing with this smoke. So we're talking about, let's just break down the science here. So we're talking about microscopic particles, PM 2.5, that have been injected into the smoke. These tiny particles are reduced, that's what's causing the reduced visibility, and that's what's causing these hazy skies. So these particles are small enough to enter the human lungs, and that's what's causing, the pulmonary issues.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's hard for people to be able to avoid that at this point because they live in those areas. All right, meteorologist Brittany Lockley, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us. Thanks, Britt. Well, a sad turn for the U.S. Olympic team today. When we come back, will Simone Biles' feet be back on the floor for the individual gymnastics competition? We're looking for the answer. Stay with us. Welcome back. Olympic gymnast Simone Biles is taking a break from the 2021 Games, citing mental health concerns as she attempts to protect her body and mind. The 24-year-old dropped out after a disappointing vault routine. Biles had mistimed her open vault, earning her a low score of 13.766.
Just got a little bit lost in the air, which is really unfortunate, especially to have a score like that go up there for the team. I feel like I robbed them of a couple of tenths, and we could have been a little bit higher in the rankings. But yeah, I was trying a 2.5, ended up doing 1.5, which was definitely not my best work.
Japanese ranked 42 in the world. Osaka is ranked number 2 and was a favorite to win the tournament on Friday. Osaka lit the Olympic quadrant to officially open the Games. And joining me now is Sharifa Barksdale, coach and former Olympic hurdler at the 1984 Olympic Games. Sharifa, good evening and welcome to BNC.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I mean, no one was happy about this news about Simone Biles, but we understand it's for a good cause. So she is taking a break, Sharifa, from the game, citing mental stress. From the outside looking in, most people don't see the pressure athletes endure. As a former Olympic hurdler yourself, what type of pressure did you face and how did that affect your mental health?
Well, it's really tough when you on that type of level and you compete. And for me personally, I broke out into hives. No matter when I had a big major race, I broke out into hives. But I would throw up, like at the 1984 Olympic Games, I threw up right before I competed. And the nerves can get the best of you. But although I pressed through it and everything, I did end up making the Olympic team, but it is a lot of pressure.
And when you go into these events, you're razor focused, right? You want that W, but there's also the pressure you feel of losing as well. What support system do athletes have when they're not at their best?
Well, the support system, we do have psychiatrists there to help them, and they do have a big team support from the USOPC as well as the U.S. Olympic staff. That's there. But the main thing is that the pressure that's put on athletes is the pressure of expectation. And when you're in the media and the press eyes as they are and as I was, it is a lot of pressure, but it's those that can handle the pressure. And even those that can handle the pressure, they do feel a little mental drained.
And Biles said she went into this wanting to win for herself, but when she got there, she felt like she was doing it for everyone else, right? What was your reaction to that statement she made?
Well, that's number one, you can't do it for everyone else. When you go in there to compete, you have to do it for yourself because other people put expectations on you. And once you remove the expectation, whether you put the expectation on yourself or you allow other people to put expectation on you, then that mentally messes with you because now you're thinking to yourself, I can't let my fans down. I can't let my team down. I can't let myself down. So all of these things are going in a person's mind, not only her mind, but other Olympians that have been on this platform. So once you take out the expectations, then you can perform up to your ability. But once you allow the media, the other people put expectation on you, you can't perform up to that, because now once you don't do that, now you feel like that you are a failure when she's not a failure.
So such good points there. And so mental stress isn't always visible. As a coach currently training junior Olympic athletes, what signs do you look out for if you suspect an athlete is having a mental breakdown?
First of all, you have to be in tune with that athlete. You have to communicate with that athlete, and that athlete has to be able to trust you. You will know if that athlete is having a panic attack. Now you have to step back. You have to ask that athlete, are you ready to compete? If you're not, it's okay to say, no, I can't, and walk away, because at the end of the day, you have to make yourself happy. When I competed, I'm not trying to make nobody's happy. I'm not trying to make the fans happy. I'm not trying to make my coach happy. I'm out there doing it for Sharifa Barksdale, number one.
Facts. Well, what advice would you give to Simone Biles or Naomi Osaka if you had the chance to speak to them about battling these mental issues? What would you say?
I would say that continue to seek help, know your worth, and know that you are the greatest. You are the best. You have not let anyone down. Don't feel ashamed because you stepped away. Never let anyone say, oh, you did this and you did this and you let us down. Take that out of the equation. You are the best. You better than the rest. At this point in given time, you just didn't perform the way you wanted to perform, and never let anyone put any expectation on you, because you know what you are about and your record speaks for itself. So never hold your head down, because you are somebody. You will let nothing stand in your way, and you are a winner. There's a winner in you, and you have proved it to the world several times, not only today, but years to come and the past. You have proven yourself.
Yes, ma'am. From your lips to their ears. Sharifa, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time. And stay with us. Much more BNC Live after this break. Back here on BNC Live, the United States will formally end its combat mission in Iraq by the end of the year, but not all troops will be pulled from the region. President Biden made the announcement yesterday during an Oval Office meeting with the Prime Minister of Iraq. Take a listen.
It's just to be available to continue to train, to assist, to help, and to deal with ISIS as it arrives. But we are not going to be, by the end of the year, in a combat mission.
The U.S. military headed to the country in 2003. There are currently 2,500 American troops there. No word on how this news might change that. The last victim of the condo collapse in South Florida has been identified. The brother of 54-year-old Estelle Hedaya confirmed she was the last of the 98 victims removed from the rubble. A judge presiding over several lawsuits filed in the aftermath of the collapse wants the property sold at market value, which would bring in an estimated $100 million or more. The Champlain Tower South collapsed on June 24th. And that's it for me here. I'm Brittany Jones. Stay tuned. Black News Tonight is next with Mark Lamont Hill. Have a good night.